Hello, welcome back to my channel. So what I wanted to talk about today is an artist that means a lot to me. How music and spirituality are all fluid, what it means to deconstruct as a public Christian music artist. So when I was a Catholic, there was an artist that I really liked called Audrey Assad. I wasn't a fan of a lot of Christian music. As a Catholic, I found a lot of it to be just like dull and repetitive and not very genuine. But something I liked about Audrey's music is that musically it was complex and interesting, and prayerful wise it seemed very authentic and very different from a lot of the other things that were in the market at the time. And really, Audrey Assad and Matt Maher are kind of, as far as I know, even still today, some of the only Christian Catholic music artists that have ever made it big. And Audrey was my go-to person. I listened to every single one of her albums. I owned all of them. I knew all of the songs. I sang and played many of them during my own praise and worship sessions in college. Once I left the church, Audrey Assad's music was one of the only things that was left untouched by my religious trauma, for whatever reason. I didn't listen to her as often as I did when I was a Catholic, but I would revisit her music, and it brought me a lot of just good vibes. When she released her newest album, Eden, back in 2020, I wasn't able to pick it up though, because I thought it was another religious album, and it turns out that I was actually incorrect. So before I get into that, I want to go just over a quick overview of who Audrey is, just in case you're not familiar with her. Audrey Assad is a 28-year-old music artist. She was raised in a Protestant religious household and joined the Catholic Church as a convert when she was 19. She converted to Catholicism back in 2007. She met her husband while touring with Matt Maher, and they now have 2 daughters. They are currently in the middle of divorce filings and whatnot since about 2019. During Audrey's career as a Catholic Christian music artist, she started out in more of like a contemporary pop sound, and with each album went into a more experimental new age kind of direction. One of her albums being solely just covers of hymns and things that are not just found within the Catholic sphere but in the Protestant sphere as well, and putting a new prayerful twist on it that you could probably play during adoration and these sorts of things. And she had expressed how she wanted her music to be more liturgical at the time, give her music back in a way that could be used within mass and sacramental settings. Throughout her career, she was apparently also very vocal about her struggle with things related to lust. I won't get into it too deeply because now I have to worry about monetization. I'm a real YouTuber now. But if you're interested, you can look it up on YouTube. It's there. A lot of Audrey's songs, there were some that related to praise and worship. Some of them were sort of just reflective, and some of them were about some of the more nuanced part of someone's adult faith, whether that was doubt or fear or feelings of just confusion and lost. And that was something I enjoyed as a Catholic because those were things that I experienced as somebody who was extremely devout. I remember one day I was searching through her Twitter and whatnot just to see what kind of stuff she had been talking about. I'm not really active on Twitter, but the last I had been looking at it, she was commentating about something in relation to the blood of Christ and the spiritual, theological aspects of it, and I just remember her Twitter being super interesting, even as a Catholic, so I was looking through it a few years after I left the church, and I came across this post. Many of you have asked over the past few years what I believe now. I've been quiet mostly because A, I have never known how to give an easy or concise answer to that question, and B, because frankly, none of us owes that information to others, especially before we are ready to share it. I'm aware of the complexities that exist inside my career and my fan base and my music simply because it was all built on me believing and staking my life upon the same Christian story my listeners did. So when I, as I have publicly shared here before, lost complete touch with that belief, it uprooted my entire life, my sense of identity, and certainly my relationship to my work. I haven't been a practicing Catholic for about 3 years, which I have only held back from saying because I wasn't really sure it was over. And to be honest, I can't predict the future and don't know where life will lead me, and I consider no doors to be closed ones. There are only curiosities, there is only presence, there is only gratitude, and those are the things I practice. Curiosity and presence and gratitude are my prayer life, in pain and bliss and everything in between. Whatever and whoever God is, I am still in love, more now than ever. The less I have clung to the ideas, I am simply trying to be here now. And that is where I found God again after a couple of years of nihilism. But that story is for another post, which I shall write soon. Before I had gotten to this post on Twitter, I knew something was kind of fishy when I saw a pro-LGBT post along the way, and I was like, okay. But now if you look on her social media, it is pretty clear that she is a bit more spiritual, a bit more free-spirited, new age, and dabbles in psychedelics, actually. And she went on a podcast talking about her whole experience with psychedelics, and I found it extremely interesting. It turns out that she has taken ayahuasca, MDMA, and weed. How do we get from here to here? There's a lot about Audrey's story that I didn't know about until I researched during this video. I knew that Audrey had been a convert into the church, but what I learned is that a sect of Protestantism that she was in was very controlling, and she suffered some emotional abuse within the church and within this part of her family. She doesn't go into too much detail, but if it gives you an idea, when she discovered the Catholic Church, she saw it as something more free and less restrictive, so take with that what you will. And she mentions that around 2016, she started to have panic attacks every time she walked into a church.
What's happening there is that I was at the tail end, or right in the middle, I guess, of going through what I then would have called a spiritual crisis, I think. Anyway, I was going through like a deconstruction of everything I'd grown up with. I was going to trauma therapist for PTSD symptoms at the time. And I had to cancel a bunch of shows because I couldn't walk into a church without panicking. I mean, there was a lot going on.
So since around that time, she hadn't been able to attend mass. She started going to counseling to sort of unravel what was happening. What was this religious-based trigger? She mentions that she struggles with OCD in relation to religion, and this maybe played a part in it, and that her whole life since she was a child, she has a lot of anxiety around the idea of hell.
My deconstruction started in earnest in the spring of 2015. I've allowed myself to ask all the questions that I had, and my biggest question started as, what if nobody's coming? What if nobody's coming? And I was like, I don't think anyone is coming. I think everything that's coming is already here or something. Like, I was starting to really get into touch with like the idea of the unconscious, collective, and sort of like, and it appealed to me and like terrified the shit out of me, because I was like, well, if that's it, like if everything my life has been built on is kind of a projection of a wounded collective psyche, basically, I gotta redo everything. Like, it sounds exhausting. I just remember being like, I can't, I'm tired, I'm a new mom, like what? But I couldn't let it alone, you know, it just was happening. And so I will say it was fast. It was fast. I was pretty tormented for about a year, but I was like, nope, burn it all down. Like, we're done.
What I find super interesting about this whole thing is lately I've been hearing a little bit more of celebrities deconstructing in public spaces, whether that's Rhett and Link talking about their deconstruction experience, or Audrey who's doing it in real time in front of her audience. She can't really avoid not talking about it with her audience. She mentions how it feels dishonest if she weren't to mention it, and I can kind of see where she's coming from. I'm sure there are many Catholics who have been understanding of her leaving. It sounds like she's still on good terms with a lot of her Catholic friends, like Matt Maher. And then there are some Catholics, or maybe they're not even Catholics, maybe they're just Christians, I don't know. But I see them in the comments of these videos saying really hurtful things. She's gained the name Audrey Assad, which unfortunately I find just kind of funny, but also, whatever. Audrey Assad's Instagram horrified me. I'm not here to hate on her, but more so to ask for y'all to pray for her to find Christ in a true and genuine and holy way. Audrey has some thoughts that don't match God's words at all, and I'm genuinely convinced that Audrey isn't a believer, and that's sad and unfortunate. I even came across this video.
Well, as of the last couple of years, Audrey Assad is actually not following Jesus. And this isn't a secret thing. She's been very public about kind of her, stepping away from the Christian faith and, very open about even diving into psychedelic drugs and different experiences that she's going through right now. And just as of late, in the last couple of months, I have felt on my heart, the Lord has put a burden on my heart for Audrey Assad.
And the thing that I enjoyed listening to her talk about was gender.
I think that, I've questioned the nature of everything, including gender essentialism over the years. I've dived into feminism and different waves of feminism to understand them a little bit more and what they do and don't believe about gender and sex and how they're related. And, that was something I was taught never to question. It's sort of like, here's the body part, that's the gender, here are the things that go with it, both aesthetically and spiritually, meaning virtues were assigned to the genders differently. People who follow me on Instagram or have seen me in person know that I don't really exhibit femininity in a traditional sense in certain ways, and it feels more natural to me to sort of blend. I don't know if I go full androgynous, but it's very inspired by people like David Bowie because he played with those things so whimsically. It invited me into a conversation about, maybe being a girl doesn't mean XYZ automatically.
Yeah.
And I think that's valuable conversation, really healing conversation for a lot of people.
And you don't have to go very far into exploring that to realize there's all sorts of socially relative identification with regard to arbitrary stuff with regard to gender.
Even back when I didn't realize she wasn't a Catholic anymore and I had left the church, I just noticed that Audrey plays around a lot with her gender expression, and she has never come out as trans or non-binary or anything. But as somebody who is non-binary themselves, I just can't help but feel some kind of gender non-conforming vibes from Audrey. She could be a cisgender person who just expresses her gender in a way that's non-traditional, and that's totally valid, but I'm just saying I feel a connection there, at least in the gender expression part. And listening to her interview about her experience on ayahuasca was one of the most interesting conversations I've ever heard on psychedelics in particular.
Psychedelics will often just open the doors of your own perception to the things that you see the things the language you speak in, or the metaphors you see things in kind of come to you. And so I was going through my shadow self with her, and she was whizzing me down the hallways of it like it was sort of like a fun house, and she kept opening these doors, and I would look in and see these ghoulish or funny things. Like it was very disorienting because I was just like, whoa, this is the shadow side also contains our gold, the things that we buried out of shame that are actually beautiful. So I was seeing beautiful things and like encouraging, talented things. I was like, oh, I want to explore that. And she was like, nope, we just gotta keep going. So I'm whizzing up and down these hallways, going down and down and down, 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 down. And when we get to the bottom, she says, okay, well, now it's time to die. And I was like, okay, and she says, not only if you choose, but if you want what you can get out of this experience, that's what's going to have to happen. You're going to have a death. I can tell you how to do it, but I can't help you. And I was like, you know what? I want to do this. Like, let's do it.
Audrey seems to be approaching her leaving of the church in a very similar manner that I have. I have not identified as agnostic or atheist since leaving. I still consider myself somebody who believes in God or a God, not just really particularly spiritual, but being a theist in general. I don't know exactly what she believes, but I just find that a lot of the conclusions that she come to are super interesting and very illuminating. I looked up to Audrey as a Catholic, and now still being able to look up to her as somebody who's a spiritual, mature adult has been something that I never expected. Now that I felt safe enough to visit her album Eden, I felt like I was returning to an old friend listening to that music. I had missed listening to new Audrey Assad music, and there was something super moving about Now, Audrey had influenced my Catholic prayer life and was now helping me heal in my current religious trauma. Just, I don't know, there's just something really beautiful about that to me. My friends who knew me as a Catholic, they know how much of an Audrey Assad fan I was, and if any of them knew now what my relationship is to her music, it's just like I could have never predicted that this would have ever happened. I mean, when a person puts their whole brand on a religion, which is not just like a political view or a set of values, but it's like it goes so much deeper, especially with how genuine her music is. And what is it like to shift that brand into a completely different direction? And I don't really know what the answer is, because my only 2 points of reference for this are Link and now Audrey. I think they go about it in the right way and not coming out so soon about it. They take their time to know what they want to say and how they want to say it. And just with coming out as an ex-Catholic or an ex-Christian in general, there's just something you're just gonna have to get used to, and that's the ridicule or the people who are like, you were never a true believer, I'll be praying for you to return.
And but then I was faced with the very difficult piece of having a public life as a person who was a very public Christian at the time, a Catholic. I guess technically I'm still Catholic. I was baptized Catholic. And so now I've been living in this weird liminal space of like, how do I be forthcoming about this evolution while still being the both and person that I am? Because I don't want to burn bridges. I want to invite people into wholeness in any way I can, which sometimes requires burning down structures, but I don't want to burn down bridges. I want to burn structures down.
That listening to her music now as a current Catholic can be kind of confusing for some who want to support a Catholic creator but find out she's no longer Catholic. At the same time, I'm sure that she would hope that Catholics are still using her music in a way to spiritually progress, and I think that's appropriate and fine. I'm just grateful that we are going in similar directions and that I see my own spiritual life reflected in the lyrics and music that she is producing and going to produce in the future. Also mentioned that she's going to be coming out with an album about sexuality, which is going to be interesting because that's a topic that I never really saw explored in her old music, even from a Christian perspective. And especially that she's very vocal about how she struggled with lust related issues. It's going to be interesting to see her explore herself in this manner and how much of it is going to be relatable to an audience that grew up in purity culture and people who feel as though they've been repressed in those cultures and growing up now and where they're at currently. So the future of her music and brand, I'm excited about. It's like one of the best things that could have ever happened for me as a fan. It's still just a really weird coincidence that I really can't get over. I think it's good that we're getting this example of artists that are just having shifting brands overall in this age of social media and having to broadcast your opinions and these kinds of things, and just people changing their mind in general on social media is not really something that happens very often, at least publicly or talked about. So when your whole career is based around it, it's pretty interesting. And I hope that in the future, and I've been hoping this for a while, that people changing their minds in a public setting is something that will be more and more encouraged and received with patience and understanding. And it's just interesting to see people like Audrey being pioneers on this untouched like territory on the online space and in a social media era. So with that being said, I know this video didn't really have a specific like focus point, But I just wanted to talk about her because she's one of my favorite artists, and just the information that I've learned going through her interviews and such, I don't know, I kind of wanted to reflect on it with you guys and look at what it meant overall. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm sorry for the long wait. I have so many video ideas that I want to get to. It's just super hard when it comes to working and balancing social life. And with that being said, I'm going to sign off here and say thank you for watching. I burped. Good job.